Yeah, I'll share my cannibalism story. Essentially, this happened in Salt Lake City, Utah, when I was researching why the Great Salt Lake was dying. So our Great Salt Lake is drying up. It's essentially the nucleus for the entire Earth. If the Great Salt Lake dies, all the ecosystems globally collapse all around it. Every single one of them, if the Great Salt Lake dies. And so we're really worried about the Great Salt Lake, and everybody's been trying to find what's happening with it. Now, being a technologist and one that does cryptography and information security, this looks like a cyber threat to me. Why is our water disappearing so quickly? Where is it going? And I found some interesting things. Like I found, we have these underground tunnels where the water is siphoned into. I found out, we know about the NSA. I found out about the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints and how much water they're personally using and funneling away from the Great Salt Lake. And then there's another company that happens to work closely with the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints called IBM. IBM is such a fascinating thing because they should know information physics better than anybody. So IBM, your binary information unit is the root cause of global warming. The binary information unit is the root cause of global warming, and all that stuff that you're building upon, those ones and zeros, is incorrect. Your coding language is simply wrong, and you're using technology from the 1950s in order to essentially build everything upon that. But we didn't have the engineering that we have today. We didn't have everything else. So you're using an outdated system. And don't steal from me, okay? You were on my network. So here's the story into cannibalism. So essentially what I found inside of our Great Salt Lake is this bit-byte system in these computers. So, here's your computer. On the inside, you have these, actually, I'll just show you here, since this is a screenshot, but these, you have, megabytes, gigabytes, terabytes, kilobytes, whatever you want inside of these computer systems. And they are packaged differently. So instead of just being one-to-one bit, which is really just an on switch, okay? It's not even a precise unit of data. It's not even the fundamental unit of data that they've been saying to us these last 70, 80 years. They've been lying to us. I don't even want to get into the physics of it. Anyways, so within this, instead of being one-to-one, they packaged it in 8. So ones and zeros, right? So even if you only have half full, it still costs you all 8 thermodynamically. And Landauer showed that at minimum, each bit costs at minimum 2 pieces of information. And then once you start flipping bits and doing more and really packaging that information in there, it's using tons and tons and tons of energy and heat and thermodynamics and stuff. And so I found why the Great Salt Lake was drying out. And I created this program that essentially lets us infoton the data, right? And so this screen that you saw here is actually how it's my proof of concept of how that works. And you can go onto LinkedIn and you can watch that, okay? And so from there, I also, because in this infoton state, it would have to be readable, right? So I went through and created new physics-based code. So this is not ones and zeros, this is wave-based physics-based code that I got modeling neuroscience, frequencies and waves. So I essentially took neuroscience and converted it over to computation, okay? Now, I knew I needed to go to IBM with this information at some point. What I didn't know is that because I was in the cyber war and I started getting cyber attacked really severely, where they were most interested in my physics equations. Specifically, the one that they got their hand on before I shut everything off was the unified boundary metric, okay? And keep in mind, these mathematics are extremely valuable, just like in the previous world wars. Math was valuable, physics is valuable, same thing is happening here, okay? So they were targeted in on this, but they didn't get everything that I had. And so what I found out, and this happened February 25th and 26th, what I found out from my landlord, because we share, I live in a HUD, and we shared a Wi-Fi network between us, is that he previously worked for HashiCorp, and HashiCorp was purchased by IBM, and they closed their sale. Keep in mind, they do analyses on these companies. They have access to pretty much everything that they need to go through these systems, and they have been analyzing this company, HashiCorp, since pretty much the month that I moved in back in July of last year. IBM had been analyzing HashiCorp that entire time. And then they finalized their sale right after those cyber attacks that I experienced on February 27th. And then I found out at the end of, I think, July, that they had been on my network and able to access all of my highly valuable IP intel this entire time. Now keep in mind, IBM is a competitor. They do AGI, they're doing quantum computing, they're doing everything. And I had refused to take my company through this investor route because I wanted the cure to cancer to be free. And so I'm like, I am not giving up anything, like I didn't want all of these great technologies that I was bringing to be monetized and pillaged by these corporateers, which are really no better than thieves. And I was one of them, but I believed that we were the good guys. I didn't know what we were doing to people. Anyways, so when I found out IBM was on my network, I notified them. I notified IBM, and I was going to do it, like I thought about doing the partnership, but I'm like, no, these people don't understand the severity of the situation, so I picked the data breach instead. Because just as they had data breached me, apparently, like, I mean, we shared the same network. My goodness, IBM, you and me, think about that for a second. And you should have information physicists that know and understand how data works. And if you don't, then my goodness, they are not the best in the business, and you are developing with subpar information, all of your systems, because they all rely on that ones and zeros and everything that you've done there. You essentially, like, you don't even fully have a quantum system because you still rely on these non-quantum data units, and that's what Infoton is. Infoton is the quantum data unit of the future. It's essentially like discovering the internet before the internet. And when I notified IBM of this data breach, instead of hearing back from IBM, who I heard from back instead was Lord VP GRC of IBM instead, within a 3-day eviction notice. And then that's when I discovered the homelessness to cannibalism pipeline, where that nice man told me and warned me because his woman got eaten. And the police know, and the police have been notified and everything, and it's not stopping. And the only way to get it to stop is to get the homeless off the streets. And that's why, as we go through this entire process, getting the homeless off the streets is a massive priority for me. And I've asked the LDS Church to help, and they have declined. They have declined. They want the violence. If somebody is declining to help you on that level, they are not your leaders, they are your abusers. And that's what's happening here. And I'm going to come and I'm going to end homelessness after we save Krista Lee from this, because they're out here eating people, and it's directly connected to those Swiss tariffs that are rated at 39%, because out in Utah, sandwiches cost $20. $20 for a sandwich. That's how heavy you guys are hitting us. And some of you might be saying, oh, well, you're a red state, you deserve it, you voted for Trump. We're not even free, okay? We have this woman in Salt Lake who calls herself the data elect, and she works at the counties. She works at the county, and she sells us to the people that get elected, and they in turn hire her for her job. And she's a lobbyist, and she essentially sells us. And she's the reason that these maps are gerrymandered, because they use her 20-year data to underpin these maps. And so we don't even have free and fair elections anymore out in Utah. And we're essentially being baked to death by the planet, by IBM, by the LDS Church, and then also simultaneously being put in the line of being eaten. If you try and say anything, they have this guy who happens to work at the Nucleus Institute. He's like the top dog senator in Utah, Kirk Cullimore, and he has this company called Titan, and essentially it's like 93% of Utah's stuff is purchased by the landlord lobby.